Good evening. I call this meeting of the Loveland School Board to order at 6 p.m. Invite everyone to, well, actually, would you roll call first?
Reverend Eilert,
Here?
Mrs. Jaranek,
Here.
Mrs. Mangan,
Here.
Dr. Swetchenow,
Here.
Mrs. Washburn.
Here.
Great, thank you. And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moved it on. All right, the agenda for this meeting sent out last Friday. So do we have a motion to adopt the agenda for this meeting tonight?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jaranek,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes. Great, thank you. And then we had minutes that should have gone out as well. We'll get a chance to review those. Any additions, corrections to our minutes from the January 7th board organizational meeting? All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jaranek.
Right. Next, welcoming of guests. Do we have anyone that's here for the hearing of the public tonight?
We do not have any.
Okay. We do have a couple administrators here. We'll be hearing riveting reports from the high school and from LECC. So thank you both for being here. And I believe that's the next piece for us, correct? So I'm not sure which one's going first. Oh, all right. Yeah.
So as you know,
Oh, thank you. I reported out on the district report card a few months ago. And so traditionally we have our principals come in and share out their building report card data as well, because it looks a little bit different from building to building. So tonight we have LECC and LHS here. Next month it will be LPS and LES. And then in March, it will be LIS and LMS. So we have Mr. Patterson and Mr. Spencer here to talk about their buildings. They're going to talk a little bit about the report card data. LECC obviously doesn't have a whole lot. So I believe Mr. Patterson is going to talk a little bit about their MTSS and RTI, how they support students and some interventions and their reading data. And then Mr. Spencer is going to talk a little bit about obviously his report card, but some of those other pieces. I know they started the Tiger Lab this year, as you know, and so he's going to talk a little bit about that and some of the absenteeism pieces as well. So I will turn it over to Mr. Patterson.
Good evening, everyone. I am told to be short, so I hear that all the time by the crowd over there. So I'll do relatively well to try to get across all the information. So Adam, if you want to kind of go through the first slides here. Like Stacy said, LECC, we really only fit into two categories for the indicators, chronic absenteeism and gifted indicators. So we do not fit the gifted indicator because we don't provide services. Not that we don't provide services. I think I said last year, we differentiate throughout the school day, but we don't test and we don't serve the gifted population. So if we were all one building, we would fit into that category. So needless to say, we did receive our 5. Our attendance is great. I would say this year is even better than last year. We do a great job. I have an attendance team that works really hard to make sure that we get students in the building each day. We do have some struggling students, but we do kind of have a procedure in place with the team, and we work with, the family as best we can to make sure that, if it's a transportation issue, Greg and Lori work with us to try to make sure that we can get them there. There are families without cars, so, we do our best to try to provide that transportation for them. So, our attendance, I think overall is pretty good. So, it's not really a concern at this point. So that's why we have the 4-star. But I think overall in general, things are going very well. I think the staff at LCSD this year they're really working their tail off, to make sure kids are successful. So next slide, Adam. So Step Up to Quality has changed their language a little bit to not the 5-star system, but the gold, silver, and bronze. And I'd like to say that we continue to be at the top level. We are still, because we were already at the 5-tier. Now, it hasn't been announced this year, but as we left end of last year, we're a gold level still, so which is great. Our preschool staff and administration team work very hard to kind of achieve all of the guidelines of Step Up to Quality, which is quite tedious sometimes. There's a lot of licensing and PD that our staff has to go through each year, and our staff is all up to date with that and doing a great job. So I'm super happy with the preschool program. So thank you to all the staff members that do a really good job making sure that our littlest ones in Loveland are welcomed and love coming to school every day. So the next slide. So in addition to our preschool program, I'd like to talk about our new preschool classroom that we're opening up next year. I'm very excited about. It's going to provide 28 additional tuition paying spots for our community. Over the last year or two, actually, it's been quite a few years. We've had a waiting list for our community to get into the preschool program. So we've actually had 113 applicants this year with 58 spots. So we're certainly to fill those spots and probably continue to have a waiting list. But nonetheless, providing the community, a little bit more access to the LCSD building. We feel like it's important to have the community, in our school. Our preschool program, I feel like is top notch. So, the more people we can start at the ground level, I think the better for us, all in all. So, on to kindergarten. The kindergarten readiness assessment. This is a test that we give in the beginning of the year, really the first day or two. So it is basically kids to walk in the door and we give them an assessment. So this is a required state assessment that we have to give. It looks at social foundational skills, language and literacy, mathematics, physical well-being, and motor skills. So it's a relatively quick test that we give one-on-one. So our average score is 266 this year. Those scores for the state average come out usually in the spring. So we're pretty on target. We're 267 to 266 is kind of been our trend. So that's one of those data points that is great to provide to the state, but not something that we're using right off the bat, as a benchmark to provide services. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next, if you go on to the next slide. So last year I showed kind of the fall data of each year for our AIMSweb data. AIMSweb is what we use to track our that's our progress monitoring data and information we use, which looks like at literacy skills. So this is kind of an overall picture from fall to spring. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with kind of the tiered system here, but you'll see that the red is kind of our tier 3 group of students, yellow is our tier 2, and green is our tier 1. So everybody falls into one of those categories. So as you can see, the beginning of the year, we kind of that's what a typical, I would say, RTI MTSS model will look like, AIMSweb model. As you see throughout the year, the interventions that we put in place with our reading specialists, our intervention team, and providing all of the interventions from a tier 3. So like our tier 3 students, they're receiving 3 to 4 even sometimes 5 days a week of additional intervention outside of the classroom. So as you see kind of throughout the year, that tier 3 is decreasing. So that's kind of a picture perfect Ames Web model, if you will. That's what you would see kind of on their website as they're promoting it. That's what you want to see. And I think the teachers and the intervention team work really hard to kind of dissect the data that we have. Every 6 to 8 weeks we meet, we look at where we are, and our goal is to move those kids back into the class, and to be back without kind of that additional support. So that's the whole year last year. If you go on to the next slide, Adam. So I took some models this year. So this is kind of our current data. I have full day and then half day models. And as you can see, on the top left screen there, we have very few students. Again, this is just one class per section there. So, our models, we just did our last data assessment meetings 2 weeks ago, right when we came back from break. And as you can see, like we're really hitting early intervention, very hard. So, we're moving kids back into the classroom, moving kids back to, just that core instruction, which is great. So, the half day, you can see the second model to the right there, have a little more kids in tier 3 in that classroom. And, every classroom is different. It comes with a different population of students. And, we do our best to try to really navigate those students and put them in the best places. Our half day models this year look really good as well. You can see the bottom right there, that's about 2 or 3 kids into tier 3 there. So, that means that most of the students in that class are not needing to receive much intervention. So I think it's a testament to our teachers that we work really hard. We differentiate within the classroom, and our core reading program is kind of doing the job. This year we've implemented a couple of different resources to go along with our core instruction, being a reader. And I think that hits kind of our phonics and phonemic awareness piece. So those are kind of the additional resources that our team has determined that, we're missing a little bit in our core instruction, and we're implementing some resources that are hitting those targets, and you can kind of see where the data takes us, and it's moving us in the right direction. So I'm super happy with where we are as a building. I know I talked, well, maybe not too long, maybe long enough. Questions that you have for us?
How did the beginning of the year this year go with the different transition days?
Sure. Actually, those 4 days were great. We had, 8, sometimes 10 kids on a day per class, with the additional teachers. So basically we split it in half. So half of the teachers had their kids on the first and second day, while the teachers that didn't have their students were helping. We paired them up with a teacher with students, and that's what helped us get through kind of our KRA data instruction. We also did our initial Ames Web, and then really just giving the teacher time to get to know the students. They had all day with just a very small population of students to kind of show routines, procedures. I mean, a lot of these kids have not been in school yet, so they're fresh out, and the teachers loved it. They really thought it was successful. They feel like, I think our data can also show that we're moving kids a little quicker. Not that I want to, jump right into education right off the bat, but we're moving them quicker. So our Being a Reader, it's our core reading program. We put students into reading sets. So the team has kind of shared that students are getting into reading sets quicker this year, which is, I think, attested to the 4 days that we're able to kind of get the data like right off the bat. So I thought it was great. I think the teacher and the team, building team, thinks it was worth it and beneficial. So yeah, thanks
Just
for
to
agreeing to do
jump in,
that.
a couple quick comments. The 4 days, I had one veteran teacher tell me she believed it set her ahead by about 2 weeks, being able to do the early interventions and the assessments with the kids. I do want to say The step up to quality is not an easy thing to achieve, not an easy award to achieve because it's a lot of data collection. Mr. Patterson brought a lot of expertise to us in that field and has done a great job. Also, the preschool classroom edition was Matt and his staff's idea. And I want to say thank you for bringing that on. It is extra work, but it's also, in my opinion, the earlier we can get our students in, get some interventions going, the better. And it just helps our families. And the fact that there's still a waiting list shows that there's a want in the community, and it being tuition-based allows us to be able to offer it. So kudos to Matt and his staff for offering up that opportunity for our families. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's 58 positions total with the 28 new ones.
So 58 to 60 spots or tuition paying spots
Right.
are available. Yeah. And that's overall in preschool. But we're offering 28 more spots
On top of
with
this.
the new classroom. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for the
Yeah.
information.
We'll be talking more about, excuse me, the tuition later on in the meeting in the business section. Lynn, did you have anything? Oh, a couple of comments since I had the pleasure of being at LECC for a couple hours this morning. A couple of things that just stood out to me talking to Mr. Patterson today. One, I was very impressed when we talk about interventions and making sure all this happens, that it takes a lot of creativity on his part in terms of the staffing to think about where can he take people from other places to maximize the amount of intervention our kids are getting. And I think he's doing a great job. Really impressed with what I heard him saying in terms of the way he's creatively using his staff to make sure that he stays focused on what's most important there with those interventions. Another thing that impressed me was we went into the classroom, one of first-year teacher, and her name is
Megan Yates.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. And she was talking about, she came out of UC, and we were talking about the importance of having teachers that have been there for a long time to mentor people like her. But also then she was talking about some of the things that she knew coming in, understanding some of the new software that we're doing and some of the supplemental things to help kids to make sure we're getting where we want to with reading. And so she had some of that expertise coming in. So creating a learning community where everyone's taking what they're doing and teaching and bringing that all together. It's just great to see that Matt's fostering that kind of an environment where teachers are working together. And so that was impressive as well. So thank you for the great work that you're doing down there. And it was a wonderful visit. And we'll hear from some others that have made visits as well when we get to the president's report later.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Anything else? Yeah, just to bounce off that, not to talk more. I'll see a red flag here in a second. But I do want to, talk a little bit about my staff for 1 second. But, to Reverend's point, I have my reading teacher, or my music teacher, my art teacher, and my PE teacher all providing interventions during their downtime, which, not a huge, but whenever they have additional time, my gym teacher is working with motor skills with some of my group. My music and art teacher are doing reading skills. So, I mean, you'll see them in the halls if you're walking through the building. So, I am trying to pull every resource we possibly can. So, those pyramids are moving to green. So, that's just kind of one of the ways that we found that, it's needed. Here's the resource and here's some activities that go along with our curriculum. Have at it. So, they've been doing a great job. So I appreciate you coming today, and, Megan's doing a fantastic job. So, working with our mentor teachers and, she's, yeah. So anyway, I'm
Matt,
done.
one more thing.
Yeah.
So I have, my two youngest went through the preschool too. They're 19 and 21, and they still talk about that experience.
Yeah.
So just thank you for expanding the program. It's a great addition to keep growing that.
Excited to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yep.
Well, I was hoping to be able to say that I am going to go longer than Matt, and I may still, and if I do, it's truly to help his reputation so he can go out there and say he doesn't always go the longest, but it could be close. I'm not sure. And the other thing I would say before I get started is, Reverend Eiler, I'm not sure riveting would be the adjective I would use to talk about the presentation, but clearly it's important stuff. Obviously, anything that the state uses to grade us and show where we're at and the progress or lack of progress we make, I mean, is important stuff to talk about, to discuss, to show where we're doing well and how we're going to get better in those areas and where we're not doing so well and the things we have to change to get to where we need to be. I said this last year, and I'll probably say this every single year to start out things. I never want us to diminish the accomplishment of getting 5 stars in a building or as a district. That is not something that just happens. It's not, you know, rolling the dice and hitting it big. I mean, credit needs to be given to our students. You know, having students that are driven and try to do their best every day when it comes to school. Credit needs to be given to our parents who, again, I've said this before, value education and push their kids to be the best. And we can't forget our teachers. We have teachers in every building that strive every day to be a better educator and to make sure they're providing the tools and the skills and the necessary information for them to be successful. So 5 stars is a great accomplishment. Now, saying that, we can't be content on where we're at. As I go through each component, again, there will be ones that we continue to get 5 stars on, but we continue to look in those components and see how we can get better in areas that we can move up, because the bar changes every year. And there's things that change with the state on what we're being judged on, whether it's subgroups or, again, increasing those expectations. So we got to continue to look to find ways to improve. And then looking at those areas where we haven't, we have a component where we went down at. And again, really honing in on what needs to be done to get us to where we need to be. I mean, for me, anything less than 5 stars is not satisfactory. Again, we got to strive to be the best. And I think as a district, we're right up there. As a high school, we're right there, but we got room to improve. So saying that, we'll start, we can figure out this, there we go. Last year, looking at the achievement, we were at 4 stars. And I talked about where we were at. I think we were at an 88%. It took a 90% to get a 5, and talked about how we need to move a handful of students from accomplished to advanced or proficient to accomplished, because this is all based on their EOC scores and where they fall. And I'm happy to say we did just that. When you look at the percents that we got in the areas of accomplished, advanced, and advanced plus, all those from a year ago increased and improved as far as the percent of students that fell into those areas. When you look at proficient, basic, and limited, those percent of students decreased. So we were maximizing the points we get for our students because they moved up to those upper 3 levels. The advanced plus, you can only get there if you're gifted. Last year, we had 0 in that area. So we made some strides in serving our gifted to qualify them to be in that advanced plus. So I'm excited about this. I think we've done a good job. I think we created some opportunities that we didn't have before to improve our achievement from a year ago. Like you said, we went up to a 92%. 90 is what you need for 5 stars. Last year, we were at 88% for 4 stars. So a huge stride. 4% is a huge jump in a year. Now, again, each year, different students taking different tests. You know, it's not a given that we're going to stay at a 92. So we need to be definitely focused on continuing our efforts to move kids to upper levels on those EOCs. Progress, again, won't spend a whole lot of time. That's just basically comparing our students' growth based on every student that takes the Ohio State test. Again, we have shown that our students that have taken EOCs have exceeded those growth expectations by a large amount, not just meeting those expectations of growth, not just improving a little, but exceeding them in a large, enough evidence to show that we've achieved that a very large magnitude across the board. So our students are making progress when you compare every student that's taken an EOC or Ohio State test. When you look at those progress, again, truly what carried us, if you look at our students that took the English 2, the algebra, the biology, American history, American government, all those kids blew that out of the water. They grew, they achieved at a high level and did very well. Geometry last year was one that we did not meet the growth. We need to still improve in. This year's no different. It's still showing that we need to improve. We did make some strides. We did improve. I think this year we did some moving of some cheese within the department. We've got some new staff members in the math department, and we really tried to be very smart about who's teaching what, based on their skill level, based on what they're passionate about. I mean, if you know math teachers, there's math teachers that love algebra. There's math teachers that love geometry. There's not math teachers that all love one or the other. They're usually in one category or the other. So we've tried to make some movement. And I think we're going to see some good things on next year's report card, even in geometry, showing that we're continuing to make some strides and improvement in that area. But again, overall, we've done very good in the progress area.
Mr. Spencer, quick
Yeah.
question on that,
Yeah.
the geometry. Are there students, I know there's some of the kids that really love math are taking geometry in the summer. So are they even taking the end of course exam?
So that's a good thing. The kids that are taking it during the summer in the past, we've not been able to include them in our scores. So those were not part of that group. This year, we've done some things, so we'll be able to count those kids. They'll be able to take that
Okay.
test because of when we're testing them, and so they will count for us.
Okay, so that, yeah, because I was gonna say there was a population probably of 20 to 30 students that are your top math students. That were never
Absolutely.
Getting counted, yeah. okay.
Absolutely. And that was something that, we made a change, going into this year. And I'm glad you brought that
Yeah.
up to make sure that we're going to be able to count those students, because probably the fact of the matter is if we were able to count those last year, we'd have probably been a 5, just barely over the mark if we were able to count those students. But we made some changes and we'll get be able to count those. So clearly that's definitely going to help our scores there for sure.
Will it be that you're testing them after they finish it in
Yep.
July?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
We'll be testing them later so they can fit in that window instead
Okay.
of testing them earlier when we did when they wouldn't
Mhm.
count.
Perfect.
Is that fair to say, Dr. Porter? Yeah.
Mhm. Right. Oh, so if they take it in the summer, then they'll test.
The test in the fall. Yes,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
perfect. No, yeah.
Yep. So we tested them in the summer when it was
Okay.
irrelevant for those scores to count for us. All right. Gap closing. We faltered here a little bit. We were at a 5 last year. We've dropped. This is looking at achievement, but it's also looking at the growth of students in subgroups that we have. And listed there are subgroups that have enough numbers in them to count and for us to have to look and to be on the report card. This is more subgroups than we had a year ago. And as those subgroups grow, that can have a drastic impact on what your rating is. So we've got more subgroups to look at and to address. And again, that's something that changes from year to year. When you look at everything, there's 3 areas, and I've highlighted those that we either stayed the same and it wasn't good because we got 0 points, or we declined in. Last year we got earned those 5 points in chronic absenteeism. We did not this year. Last year we showed growth in ELA. We did not get those points for this year. In math, there's no change. We didn't get points last year. We didn't get points on this report card. So those are areas of focus. I know in the gifted performance indicator, there's some areas there, those 3 components where 2, we did not get points. The performance index, we improved by 2%, by 2 points from a year ago. And probably last year, if we had that, we would have met it, but the bar changed. So we have to get a higher percent, improve more, and to be able to do that. So even though we improved, it wasn't enough. So, but we are heading in the right direction when it comes to gifted. But those other 3 areas we need to focus on. And I'm going to share some things that we're doing currently that I think will have an impact not only on our gap closing, but will also impact the other areas of the report card. Looking at chronic absenteeism, I mean, chronic is when students that miss 10% of the school year for whatever reason. It could be excused, it could be unexcused, it'd be for a medical reason, it could be for hospitalization, it could be for suspension. It doesn't matter. If they're not here, they're not here. And so, what is? Oh, sure. Yeah, that's fine right now. So we, I thought maybe I hit my clicker there and I was just running through everything. So the first thing we're doing is we have a process we have to go through when a student misses a lot of time from school, and absences are not looked at as days, it's looked at as hours that they missed. That changed a few years ago. And so we have some of this process we've created. Some steps are required by the state for us to do, but we've added some steps in there before. So the first thing that happens is when a student has hit a certain amount of hours, an excessive absence letter is sent. Before it gets to that point, our counselors and administration are trying to look and identifying kids that are starting to get close to that and trying to have some conversations ahead of time. Some we get to, we have those conversations, some we miss, and an excessive, we're notified when they've reached those hours. At that point, we send a letter home saying, your child's missing a lot. They're heading down a road of truancy. We need to try and as a parent, make extra efforts to try and get your child here. Please let us know what we can do. But in addition to that, as soon as that letter is sent, our school counselor's making a call. They're calling home, and this is something that's added. They're calling home, they're meeting with the kid. Again, trying to see what's the reasons that kids are missing. Some, it just may be one of those things where they have went through a period of hospitalization or a period of sickness. It could be a thing where there's some family dynamics that's going on that has kept a kid at home. It could be a thing where the kid's made some bad decisions and has been out for a while because we have told them to be out. But really zeroing in and identifying what that problem is so that we can maybe provide support, help change before it gets any further. And at that point, we look, if there's improvement, we're monitoring, but there's no further things that we need to do other than check in. If there's no improvement, then we get to the point where there's a habitual letter sent, which is not a very nice letter that says you are at the point that truancy is going to be filed. And it requires a parent then, once they get that letter, to come in for a meeting. And so they have a meeting with an administrator, with their counselor, both the parent and the student. And we sit down and develop an entire plan on what we're going to do and what they're going to do as a parent to contribute to their kid getting here on time. And we'll go through that process. It is very detailed. And we'll give them some time to put that into action. They have a period of time for that. If we don't see improvement after so many days, truancy is going to be filed. If there truly is some extenuating circumstances, then we may hold off until some of that's resolved, again, especially if it's hospitalization or something like that truly is out of their control, or that, they have medical advice and letters from a doctor saying that they can't be at school for a while. So we have some ability there to navigate that, but we're not messing around this year. I mean, there's going to be very few excuses at that point because we've got to get these kids in school. And so that plan itself, we're definitely being more diligent and trying to be more on top of it and trying to catch kids earlier, sooner than later, I guess, is the conversation, and trying to put some things in place to assist and provide support where we can.
How many of those habitual letters have you sent, would you say?
I don't know the exact number. I can get that to you for sure. But we've had every week, we have a meeting with the counselors where those letters are printed out. So we go through each week, the excessive letters and the habitual letters will come out, and we'll go through each one as a team to look through and see what, are we ready to pursue and go on, or have we not had that interaction with the parent, and do we need to make that a priority? But I can get that to you as far as how many's went out.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, the metric says meet annual goal or show improvement from prior year. Can you define the annual goal for us? Is that something that we set? Is that a state set number?
The state sets that.
Okay. And do you know what it is off the top of your head? Sorry.
I don't have that.
It's okay. one of those three. And then, right, and that's what always like, I'm like 20%, it's a high number. The, the other one is when you get to that truancy filed part, how often does that happen? And then what practically does that mean for those students?
So that doesn't happen often. I think, again, we'll probably see an increase because we've probably been more lenient and understanding. And then found out maybe that hasn't always helped. But it requires them to go to court, meet with a magistrate. They'll have a conversation. They'll develop a plan. The magistrate will pretty much say, you've got to get in school. If you got a period of time to show improvement, and they'll put some conditions on there. And then if they don't, then it'll go, I think, downtown to more of an official setting. So there's that intermediate step when it comes to truancy, but they're usually pretty good as far as being very direct with the family. Now, the negative thing, I guess, as kids get older and you get in that 17, close to 18 range, we start to lose some of the meat behind that and the motivation. So it's better to get them early to keep them on track and to get them to know what that experience is like and what that means. There's also the ability to, if a parent is not supporting the plan, if a parent is not doing everything they can to get their child there, that they can be charged for contributing to their child not coming to school. And we went down that road before too, to try and get the parent on board as well to make that extra effort to get their child here. So
This is just one of the numbers that always concerns me because I don't feel like I have a good handle on how many students we're actually talking about each year with this problem. And, clearly we don't have the control to make a 17 or 18-year-old come to school, but we're really letting them down if we don't do everything that we can.
absolutely.
That's why it's important also to, and I don't know if this is done here, but share with the parent to file incorrigible charges on the child, go to the police office and do that, at least have that marked so they've done their piece.
Yeah,
Along with what the
it
school does.
absolutely is
Yeah.
shared with them. Unfortunately, what we see a trend is they'd rather us be the one to file it than them
Mhm.
take that step. That's not always true.
Right,
But it's, as a parent, sometimes it's hard to make that decision to file charges against your own child. But they are definitely informed that they have that opportunity, that ability to do it. A lot of times our resource officer will meet with a parent to make sure they understand the steps they need to do it. If they choose to do it, how to go about doing that. And so our resource officer has been very good at having those conversations with parents. A lot of times when we do some of those early meetings, those intervention meetings where they just have got that excessive letter and they're saying, my kid's just refusing to do this, I can't get him here. They'll meet with a resource officer at that time. We've also had times where parents have called us and we've had an administrator go to the house with a resource officer early on to meet with that student and say, this is what your parent is saying to us. You have to come. It's not a choice. If you don't, this is the road you're going down. And a lot of times when we're there, they'll come in a little grudgingly, but they do come in. But again, I think the big thing is the reasons. Again, we just like in the classroom, we have those kids that can't. That they want to come, but maybe it's a transportation thing. Maybe there's something going at home. Maybe it's a medical thing. And then you have your won'ts. That I'm not going there. I don't see the value in it. There's other things I want to do. I don't need an education. I'm going to do this as a career that doesn't require that. And so changing that mentality is where the support and focus can happen with kids like.
Hey, Dave, just to jump in, it used to be a few years back that you'd watch the truancy. If they had 7 days, you filed, they went to court. We didn't have all this intervention. Now districts are required to have the intervention. This is pretty extensive. So it's nice to see that we have that many interventions trying to get to the families. It's a tough subject. But we talked one time, not to put you on the spot, when you look at really the core of your absenteeism, we're not talking about a lot of students. It's a lot of absences, right? And
Right.
so if you were, I don't know if you recall that conversation, but the percentage of students that really show up, do what they're supposed to do is very, very high. It's just that other subset that they work very, very hard to try and work with the parents. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's just with discipline and behaviors, you spend, usually it's 95% of your time dealing with 5% of your population. It's really higher than that. We spend 98% of our time really dealing with 2% of our population. But those 2% can hurt you, not only themselves and not doing the stuff they needed to be in line to graduate, but again, with a report card not coming to school, creating all kinds of other situations. Other things that we're doing, again, we do have kids that are tardy. Used to, there was a process that was in place where they single file come in, have to sign in, then have to wait to get a pass and get to class. If you had 20 kids that were tardy, that could take you 20 to 25 minutes to get those through. And since we're talking about hours, those minutes matter. And so now we've got a system where we got kiosks set up, we got multiple computers where they come in, put their ID in, and then it automatically goes to the teacher saying they have checked in or are on their way to class. The kid gets a class, the teacher clicks they're there, and we're good. So the speed of getting kids into class as quickly as possible when they are late has changed immensely just from a year ago. We started this in the spring, and it's been much better. I'd like to think our tardies are improving, but they're still, depending on the day, you have 5 tardies to 25 tardies. It just depends on the morning and the day. But again, no matter what it is, we're getting kids in the classroom again a lot
Are there
quicker.
any teeth in that system? If you have 10 tardies, then this happens.
Yeah. So we have a whole consequence list each quarter. They start out after 3 tardies, and they started getting detentions, and the detentions lead to Thursday schools. Thursday schools lead to Saturday schools. Saturday schools lead to in-school detention all day long. So for some, that it's not a frequent problem. It takes care of it pretty quick. For those won'ts or some of those can'ts, less effect on some of those. The other thing that I think is going to make a difference, and time will tell, I think the new start time is going to help in so many ways. I mean, I think obviously we talk about mental health, coming to school in the daylight, having that extra hour or extra half hour before they have to come in compared to now. I think those are positives. I like to think they're getting extra sleep. They're going to be up ready to go daylight, and they're going to be here on time. I think for some that will matter, but I'm not sure the overall impact. You'll have a handful that will just stay up a little longer, and use that time. I mean, just to be real about it. But again, I'm optimistic and very hopeful with that time that start time being later, that we're going to see lots of benefits from that, not just only in kids getting here when they need to. All right. The other thing, when we look at the other 2 areas of the growth piece, again, we're looking at 2 things when we look at that. We look at achievement, and we look at growth. Achievement, are they achieving at a level of all peers in their subgroup? And are they growing at a certain percent above of where all the kids in their subgroup are? And I think when you look at the achievement piece, if you're looking at ELA, our kids are achieving high in all those subgroups, whether you're looking at all students economically disadvantaged, students with disability, white, non-Hispanic, those are our 4 subgroups in ELA. And the state sets a goal, a PI goal that you have to hit. And then beyond that, each year that goal goes up to the point where until you achieve your long-term goal. You look at our kids' achievement, where they're at now. So if you look at all students, they had nearly 105 on their performance index. Their goal was 83, so we far exceeded that. And the long-term goal is 100 on the PI. We've already met that long-term goal. And you look at each subgroup, we've done the same thing. Not only have we reached the goal for that particular year, but also the long-term goal. So not meeting gap closing, I just want to make sure we know that means our kids are miserably failing. They are achieving at a high rate. And it's like a kid with an A, trying to get them to get a higher A. It's making that change, and we haven't accomplished that when we look at these 2 areas, and accomplished that that growth piece that needs to happen. When you look at math, it's no different. When you look at those subgroups, there's more subgroups in math. Over half of in all of those, we've met the goal, and over half of those, we've met the long-term goals. So again, our kids are achieving at a high rate, are doing very well compared to all their students that are performing in those subgroups. We're just not showing that growth, that expectation that of growth that they need. And so that's what we've got to work on in order to get those points. So I think some of the things we're doing, again, I can't tell I'm excited about this new bell schedule. Within this, we have that time in the morning for our teachers, you know, that 7:30 to 8:10, which we've never had before. And so one day every week, our teachers are going to be collaborating. They're getting together. They're going to get with their peers that are teaching same classes as them, and they're going to be aligning, making sure curriculum is in alignment, making sure when they're teaching things and what they're teaching is the same. How they teach it, there can be some variety, but there's some alignment there. They're going to be working on their common assessments. Many have common assessments. Some need to develop some common assessments. So then in those collaboration time, they can have time to talk about the data and where students are doing well on those assessments, where they're struggling, or this teacher's kids may be overachieving where this teacher may be struggling in certain areas, and they can have that conversation. Why are your kids doing well? Why are mine not? And it's not, and I will not accept the excuse, well, your kids are different or you have the better kids. That's not part of the conversation. We need to be able to look on how we can improve every kid's learning, and those kind of conversations and that collaboration time will be helpful for that. But having that time to look at that data, to dig in to some of those things that they haven't had time before, unless they did it on their own during a planning period here or there, during a PD day, they're going to have that time every single week to do that. And we're going to make sure we're going to have things that they're going to be told to work on. Because if we don't, they're human. It could start out good, and there may be one or two collaboration days a month where they're talking about their weekend, or you know how their kids are, or what they're doing now. So there's going to be some responsibility and some agendas for what they're going to be working on during that time. 2 days a week during that time, teachers are going to have office hours for students to come in. So those students that maybe have been absent, 2 days are feeling like, you know what, I'm overwhelmed. I'm never going to get caught up. I might as well be absent 3 and 4 days. There's going to be time set up at least twice a week for them to come in to get back on track. There's going to be time for teachers to bring in kids if they want to come in to get some extra prep for a test that's coming up. Or for kids that are struggling or have some skill deficits that they need to work on, teachers can ask them or talk to the parents to have them come in during that time to get that help, whether it's individual or as a group. Obviously, we don't want to get a ton of kids in the morning because that sort of defeats the purpose of a later start time for them. But it does provide an opportunity for kids that are behind that need to get caught up for whatever reason or need some extra help. There's time there with that teacher to do that. We're going to try and stagger which departments are on what days. So if a kid needs help in science and he needs help in math, he doesn't have to choose one or the other. He's going to be able to do both if they choose or need that. So I think that's going to be a positive thing. 1 day a week. We currently have in a month, we have once a month a staff meeting, once a month a BLT meeting, which is our building leadership team, and once a month department meetings. We'll have those during that time, 1 day a week. That time is longer than what it is now. So we're going to be able to have a little more in-depth conversation. We're going to be able to talk about, or in our BLT meetings or department meetings, talk about what's occurred in the collaboration time that maybe others are struggling with or need help with, or be able to share something that they're doing that's been very beneficial to kids and share that out. So we'll have time to do that in those mornings as well. So I think that's going to be very positive. And again, that work not only will help the gap closing, but it's going to help with graduation. It's going to help with achievement. It's going to help in many of our different areas when it comes to the report card. Talked about Tiger Labs, something we're going to try new. Again, and I'll try to go through this quickly and be able to answer your questions. again, the purpose of that was to assist students, that are struggling completing tasks or doing their homework, to help them better manage their time to help them with executive functioning skills, time to create some positive relationships with kids that may be struggling and have some direct communication support of them. These kids that are in Tiger Lab are a lot of our at-risk kids, or a lot of our kids that are absent, or a lot of our kids that do have those skill deficits, or are those can'ts and won'ts. And so a lot of them are credit efficient. So it allows them some time to work on an online class to recoup that credit. And this is something we have for 7 periods a day. And we've been able to take with the Tiger Lab, and the next thing I'll talk about is our peer tutoring and writing lab, is having teachers as a duty be in these classes, providing direct support for our kids in that Tiger Lab. So we have a math teacher or a science teacher or an English teacher. One of those is in one of those periods. So we have 1 to 2 teachers in Tiger Lab supporting those kids and be able to help them in those content areas. And when they're not in Tiger Lab, they're in the peer tutoring writing center, helping support that and manage that. So.
We talked another time I remember when we talked Tiger Lab initially probably last year at this time. You were, I think, talking about like just trying to think about how do you assess how that's going and so forth. Any sense of, anything you developed in terms of assessment and?
Yeah, I got some data right here to share with you as far as just looking at the first semester, and it's small. And you can probably look at it in more depth later on, but looking at the very first quarter right out of the gate, we were serving 86 kids. 61 of those kids had a period assigned to them called Tiger Lab, where they were receiving direct support. There was another 25 kids that the teacher in Tiger Lab oversaw, and those 25 kids were really focused on credit recovery, but did not need that everyday support. So they're probably in a study hall working on that, and it's more of a check and connect where the Tiger Lab person is once a week. If needed, we'll be checking in with that kid. Will come to Tiger Lab. They'll see where they're at on their work. Are they meeting their goals? Are they progressing how they're supposed to be? If not, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it to get where you need to do? If they're doing well, then that may stretch out to once every 2 weeks. So that's more of a consult and case by case for those 25. That next, the second quarter of this first semester, we were serving 70. That number went down because some of those kids completed their credit recovery and so did not need that. Or organizational wise, were showing that they were becoming, after a year, were independent and could manage that time. And so this is not something once they're in, they stay in. Our goal is to help them, assist them, provide them the support and get them on their way. So we've had some of that, but 57 were in there each period with 13 of them as a consult only. So definitely I'm optimistic. Again, some of those numbers that have changed from semester 1 to semester 2. We've had some kids graduate early because they were able to finish a couple classes they needed to. Obviously, we lost some stuff because of behavior to an expulsion or a withdrawal or alternative placement. And then we have some kids that just moved out. So that's why some of our kids, when you see a lower number, that's why, as far as that goes. So the other thing we're doing for every kid that's in there, and this is hard to see again, but they have a plan. And so that plan goes into great detail, what their schedule is, if they're on an IEP or 504, what those accommodations are that they need. Also coming from the student, a conversation with the teacher and the student, how best do they receive feedback? How best do they like to support? Is it one-on-one? Is it through just check with me and I'll tell you if I need help? Is it a pull out where they definitely want some help in a specific area? All that is laid out in this plan. We also have some kids that receive mental health services, have a weekly appointment with a counselor. And so they set out their week schedule as far as what it looks like. So maybe every Tuesday they're meeting with a mental health counselor. So that's marked. Maybe every Monday they are looking at the organization. What do you got coming in this week? What tests do you have coming up? What are we going to work on? and maybe Wednesday is dedicated just for some math intervention because that's their toughest class and their skills are need improvement in that area. So every kid has a plan like that that's that detailed. And every week the teacher sits with them to go over that plan and change and adapt as needed. So again, I'm optimistic. It's I think we're doing a great job with the kids that can't, providing them some support during their school day to help them. I think we're doing a great job with kids that are taking online classes, making sure these get completed and they're progressing. I think we're still trying to figure out the kids that won't. I think we have a few success stories and we have some that we just still have not made any headway on, that we're trying to be creative and think outside the box. So I think that piece, that portion, that population will continue to be a struggle. In some cases, feel like you're throwing darts at the board and seeing what sticks, but we'll continue to try to be creative and work. So,
I have a comment.
yeah.
I think I love the idea. I think it kind of reminds me of a college setting where students can have those office hours to come in the mornings. The Tiger Lab, could that eventually go to a point where if I needed to go in and just get help on this service, do I just ask to go there or I don't know if you do online passes to classes or whatever, but just to get that assistance in a down bell where it's maybe an elective versus a core class and see if you can get that extra support. I really like how it's all laid out, even though it's focusing on certain students at the moment, but it could open up to be more like a college
Sure.
way of supporting students and getting them prepared for that next step. Because
And I think we could lead to that. I think right now we're still trying to figure out just our numbers,
Oh,
how many,
sure.
how
Yeah.
from quarter to quarter that can change. And those numbers, when we get towards the end of the third quarter and fourth quarter, are going to jump because we're going to have those seniors.
Yep.
Put it in cruise control and all of a sudden third quarter, they failed a class. And there's that panic and we got to get back in gear if we're going to finish out. Now, I do think some of those kids that you're talking about, I think we've addressed in our peer tutoring
Yeah.
and our writing lab. Because this, again, we started last year just as far as having some kids that we trained that other students can come down and get help as they needed. They can make appointments and work independently. We've broadened it this year. So we have 7 students who really are considered interns that with the teacher are marketing the program. They're part of the training of our tutors. They're helping scheduling students that want to come down and matching them with the appropriate tutor. So we're providing a pretty darn good experience for those interns, developing skills and management skills that they can use beyond, doing this and beyond high school. Currently, we have 42 peer tutors that are trained that are supporting kids. Just this first semester, there's been 217 tutoring sessions where kids have either come in and worked directly with the tutor or have communicated, digitally on what they need or wanting them to look at something. The writing center itself, we are sending students out into classrooms. We are sending, I had the opportunity to sit in an English class and was observing where it was a writing day for kids working on a paper. They had 2 students from the writing center and kids were coming back working with those students, and those tutors, those people from the writing center were providing feedback. And the feedback was pretty incredible. I mean, it was much better than probably feedback I could give. They explained things in the same language that for a student to easily understand, and they were very specific and their suggestions were great. And they asked questions like, what are you trying to say in this? It wasn't like, this is what you should do. I mean, it was more probing and trying to see what the student was wanting to do in that paper, what argument they were making, or what kind of hook were they trying to do in their introductory paragraph, and just guiding those students and giving them suggestions. So very impressive. So this is 2 days a week. This is available. Kids can go out at teachers' requested classrooms any day of the week. But this has been a big hit. And like I say, in that class, we have teachers that are working in the Tiger Lab on those days, going to the peer tutoring room to also provide support to kids. So if it's a higher level and those tutors feel uncomfortable, we have that teacher in there to provide help, as well as just making sure everyone's being served in that.
And in terms of physically within the building, all these different pieces, so Tiger Lab, the peer tutoring, the writing center, are those happening, any counseling services, is that centralized at all? Is that kind of spread out?
So our Tiger Lab, we created a classroom in the media center. So we used to have 2 classrooms in the media center. We now have 3. And so that's a space in the media center that we created for the Tiger Lab. We have a room for peer tutoring that's just right next to the office. It used to be a classroom, but we moved some teachers around, and so that was available. So there's a room that every kid knows where it is. It says peer tutoring on the signage right outside the room, and kids know to go there. So we have specific rooms for those.
I know, just thinking about the college thing, and this partly is, when you're in a college setting, you're, can be completely different buildings even, so it's not quite as big a deal when you're in the same building, but Wittenberg, my experience there, we had a writing center in one building, math workshop in another building, counseling services were in another building. We took in part of the library, created a student success center, and just every year they've added more and more of the student services all into that one location. So it's a one-stop shopping kind of place, whatever kind of services you need, counseling services, writing workshop, math, whatever, you go to the one place, Student Success Center.
Yeah.
And it's increased the engagement of students there and helped, a lot of retention things that they're doing there. So just kind of physical location matters, I think, too, and something to think about.
Yeah,
Think about
yeah.
moving forward.
So we try to keep it close and centrally located. For that reason itself is easy for people to find. It's with the Tiger Lab, again, it's next to the office in case we need to go there to provide some extra support. It's next to restrooms, so they're not having to travel far away or walk down the halls and start to wonder. So we've tried to make sure the location of that met those needs for sure. And the thing I like about again, all of this stuff, even with the teachers, with the peer tutoring, with Tiger Lab, these are all supports, again, that are provided within the school day. I mean, I think there's plenty of time outside of school that you create things, but our kids are so involved. So many of our kids have jobs. Transportation a lot of time is an issue. And so all these things in the past, I think, have not been as successful because of kids getting there or coming there. So that was the whole focus of what can we do within a school day to try to provide some very targeted interventions, some direct supports for these students to, well, we got them captive, even some of our kids that are our highest discipline or behavior issues, some of those kids come every single day. They are not part of our truancy group because this is the most stable, consistent part of their lives is that school day. So they haven't seen the value of education yet, but they're here. So we've got them captive. So if there's any hope for us to be creative and get them on board and get them some credits, it's during that time, and that's the time we have. Quickly, I know I'm going long here. Matt, I went longer than you. You're welcome. Graduation rate again has, it was better than it was a year ago, 98.8. I think that's pretty extraordinary. And the fact of the matter is, it's probably, if it wasn't for the state of Ohio, it'd be closer to 100% or 99 because we have kids that are on IEP that meet with a team that have the opportunity to defer their diploma and to get an extra year of skills and training or out in the job world to help them become more independent and to be more productive as citizens and help with their future. But even though they've met every graduation requirement, even though they could walk across that stage and get a diploma, because they deferred it, they count against us. So I'll never understand that. I don't know if anybody can explain the reason for that, but they do. And even with that, we're almost at a 99%. So, excuse me. I'm pretty proud of that and think that's great. So that's it. What questions do we have?
Not a question, just more of a comment. I think, you said back on the Tiger Lab, the executive function skills. I think, just the opportunity, and Christina and Jonathan said it too, I think there's so many studies that say if there's students that have an adult other than a parent that they have a relationship with that believes in them, they're more likely to succeed.
Mhm.
So all these touch points to our students are just critical, whether it's from the very beginning. And then, so I appreciate you're doing that. And I think our students learning how to form new relationships. So, we've encouraged all of our kids, when you go to college, even if you're doing well in the class, have a relationship with that professor, because you never know when you'll need the help. So show up.
Yeah.
And I think that applies whether it's a professor, whether it's a boss, whether it's a coworker, being able to creating people, how everything happens through relationships. So,
Yeah.
and hard work, but I just think we can't underestimate those executive function touch points that you're making with all the students.
Yeah. And then you talk about that. I mean, I have those same conversations with our adults
Right, right.
because, and you probably heard me say this, the relationships are the foundation to all
Yeah.
learning. If there's not that relationship, kids are not going to achieve at the level they could.
Yeah.
And so, making sure our adults understand, reaching out, standing in the hall and saying hello, talking to your kids, any chance you could get, going to events outside of the classroom, to give them the opportunity to buy into that relationship and to show that you care as an adult is critical.
Yeah.
So like you say, yeah, it's important for our kids to understand every chance they have an opportunity to make a connection.
Yeah.
It could be a good connection for them, but it's important for our teachers to understand they need to reach out. They need to be the one to initiate a lot of those conversations to help those students feel comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other thing too is I know you had the 8th graders up today that are going to be coming to the high school, and then Matt, you have kindergarten roundup coming. I think, it's something I know we've talked about on the communications committee, is that don't assume that people know all the things happening in your building or all the opportunities available for their students. I think there's so much we do day in and day out that we forget,
You're right.
what all, and you haven't even, neither of you have touched all the things you do. Like, this was just the report card review, but there's a lot that I think people don't realize that is available for our students. So when you have those new people in for the first time, whether it's an 8th grader or a preschool parent or new kindergarten, don't forget to tell them the things that you might just assume they know.
Good point.
Just to jump in and say thanks to Mr. Spencer for his leadership in moving towards the majority of these interventions and touch points with our students were not here a couple of years ago. And so Dave has really made it a point to provide the opportunity for those relationships. You're not going to make much movement in academics if you don't have good relationships. That comes first, and then moving forward. So Dave has done a great. I'm excited to see what the new schedule does. It provides the opportunity for those staff members to, if they haven't had time with a student in their class, they now have time at the beginning of the day if the student takes advantage. And so thanks to Dave, his team, all the staff, the counselors, he has a great team over there that's really wants to do good things for kids. And I'm excited to see what the new schedule does. Hopefully it gets rid of all your tardies and all your absences.
It will not, but we hope it can get better. And then Mike, I will get you that information as far as the number of habitual letters that went out and the number of tardies and number of students. I'll get that information so you can share with the board if that's okay.
Right. That's
Okay.
perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
You did beat Mr. Patterson, so well done.
Can we
Not
get
that
a-
anyone was keeping track.
Can we get a report on the number of truant kindergarteners we have?
All right, thanks to both of you for those reports. They were riveting, by the way. I definitely would qualify as such. All right, anything else under the reports for administrators? And board president report, couple of things. One, in terms of the schedule for the high school, I've heard lots of positive feedback within the community about that. And so that's great that that's moving forward. One of the things that we've also heard is then, what about some of our other schools? And so just to let the community know that we'll continue to look at that and think about how we can be creative, particularly for this campus, and how might we be able to adjust that here. Primary challenge being some of the other requirements that we have for transporting parochial kids, and I could talk probably more about that later if he wants to, but anyway, that'll be something that will be part of our ongoing conversation, but we have had some folks reaching out about that as well. We did have the opportunity to go and do some visits. I know some of you were able to go around and do that too. And I think Eric's got one coming up, you said, on Friday. So that's great. And just wondered if you all had a nugget that you wanted to share, some impression or just something that you took away from your visits don't need full reports, but just something that stood out to you while you were there. Eileen, we'll just go down the line.
Oh yeah, today I went to the middle school and I got to actually experience Step Up with them. And so I went to the middle school and high school. And I'm just always so impressed with our student leaders at the high school level. Tigers Inc. Had a panel of students answering questions that they received ahead of time. And then Hope Squad was conducting tours and answering questions for kids. So it's just great to see the kids step up and lead the younger ones. So it was really nice all around.
Christina, how about you?
I got to go to Loveland Elementary with Miss Foreign, and it was nice to get to chat with her for a little bit as a board member versus a parent, and walk around the building, saw some classrooms, music department, interventions that were going on with students, and then see the new reading program that's being used. I think the students really enjoy it. They were able to work. I saw a lot of paired learning, working with their buddies, and then also small group learning. So just a lot of different opportunities, and every classroom's different. So I really enjoyed the view of the classrooms and how there could be different seats available. If the student needs to move up around a little bit, they have that ability to do that while they're learning. So it was a very nice opportunity to visit and see staff and students working hard.
Could spend a little time in the classroom with my granddaughter this morning, read to their class, but I was also very impressed, Mrs. Jones doing some spelling, just amazed by all of these kindergartners and the spelling that they're already doing, the reading that they're doing. And as I was leaving, she was beginning to talk to them about coding and how many of them can say the word algorithm. They started with algorithm. So pretty impressive in the kindergarten building, and far different from, I think, any
Yeah.
kindergarten experience we had back in the day, right, Erin?
Yeah. I went over to LIS last week, and I think Mrs. Carter, so Mr. Spencer, you're talking about getting to know your kids. I think she knows every student's name in that building. It was amazing. And to know she only has them for 2 years. But I went home, I told my husband, I'm like, it's magic what happens in the building. I mean, it's just, and you know, whether it's a traditional classroom setting, but it was, what I loved is that, you know, there's, you know, traditional where you just think of the teacher in the front of the classroom, but there's also the number of small groups that are happening and the students moving around depending on what the need. It's so efficiently run. And to see the interventions that are happening, to see the kids that are going to be your future writing lab tutors. You know, Mr. Waple had kids that had just finished up reading assignments, and I talked to a table of 4 girls and a table of 4 boys. And there's 2 girls that were just lighting up about their creative writing. You know, one was the walking pencil, or that they had just come up with on their own. And same thing, then I go over to the boys' table and 2 of the boys are just lighting up about their creative writing. And then they had some kids like me that would have just taken the prompt, you know, so, but it just, the amount of, just the staff that is just so passionate about these kids. It really was magic. I love seeing the inner workings of the day. Great.
Anything from Great Oaks, Christine?
Oh, yes, for sure. So I went to my first meeting. So we had, the board was sworn in, board of directors, and I was the newest board of directors. That was nice to meet people, and new leadership roles were taken over. So if anyone needs or wants to go, we have regular meetings on the second Wednesday of each month. So family, parents of students can attend, or just if you want to learn more information. The Scarlet Oaks program is welcoming high school students into their new spaces of exercise science and sports medicine, firefighting, early childhood. All those are new buildings, new rooms and locations. And then they have a certified nurse assistant program that they're starting. And then at Laurel, their buildings are new programs, or new buildings are for welding, law enforcement, and future alternative electric vehicle technicians. So lots of new things happening at several of the programs. Everything's great. Look forward to the next meeting.
In terms of legislation, I know we've all seen lots of updates in this last month, particularly coming out of the end of the last session in the State House, coming into this new one. Been some reverberations after the new Speaker of the House talked about whether or not we can continue state funding for schools at the level, and some questions he's had about that. So just encourage anyone who's out there listening to be in contact with your representatives to remind them how important it is to you that our schools continue to be funded at the levels that they have been. For us here in Loveland, maintaining the guarantee and the state funding model is a real priority for us. We continue to be hopeful that we can advocate that we see some inflationary increase in that guarantee over the long run. But right now, we want to make sure that we're maintaining funding at least as it is, because there's some question about that where I don't think there was necessarily a question before. So encourage everyone to be in contact with your reps about that. Anything else on the legislative?
Just from a
lift up?
standpoint, I had reached out a couple weeks ago to meet with Senator Blessing. He's over in Colerain. He's on the Senate Education Committee. So I'm meeting with him on next Monday. He did call me though, just to see what I wanted to talk about, and I shared my concerns with the comments that we were hearing from Huffman and others about not wanting to continue to fund the Fair School Funding Plan. And he shared that he's feeling exasperated, that he just said that if this is the way the funding's going to go, he likely would not vote for the budget. So I'm going to meet with him next week. I'll keep the group updated on what I learned. But I think we need to continue to reach out to our local reps and be sharing our concerns.
Anything else from any of the board members?
We had a student experience committee meeting today, and went over a lot of the curriculum adoptions that are coming up. And I was very pleased to see how fiscally responsible we're being, and we'll see, I'm sure, the comparisons in the near future. But there's been a lot of behind the scenes work there to compare prices and get the best bang for our buck, if you will. They also went over the science of reading and where we are, and we're in a really good place as far as our teachers being trained on that. There are only a few remaining that need to complete that. The AI thought leader cohort and the leadership cohorts are moving forward, and sounds like they're successful, and they have 2 more meetings each, I think, for the remainder of the school year. And then the strategic vision dashboard, which I won't say much about that because it's very exciting and you're going to hear about it soon, but that was phenomenal to see, get a little sneak peek of.
I'm just going to add on to that. Don't forget the Science and Innovation Expo from 9 to noon on February 1st. I'm excited. First time doing it, so we're excited to see how it goes and who we can bring along. I will be passing out some flyers around the community, so it's out and about, so everyone can come if they wish.
Also, just one, hope to see, I know some of you are signed up to come, would love to see as many people as possible at the School Foundation on the 31st, has the Distinguished Alumni and Distinguished Faculty Awards. So excited for that. It's from 6 to 8 on the 31st.
Eric, anything you want to say from the facilities meeting that we had recently?
Yeah, honestly, you guys have really covered it all for me very well. From a facility standpoint, there's, I think we'll hear just a little bit, but there's been some reorganization of employees in order to try to make us more efficient. We certainly had a lot of problems with snow, but got that cleared out pretty well, as you can see when you drive around and look at the campuses. I think that one of the biggest take-homes on the facilities was just making sure that we recognize that our maintenance crew is there to support our staff. And there have been problems in the past with like tickets of my door doesn't open or my ceiling tile's broken that weren't getting filled. And we're doing much better job at getting those tickets closed and taken care of. So it's not just the students that we serve.
Thanks to Rich for all of his efforts in that area and a lot of the improvements he's already brought new in that role. And so we appreciate the work that you're doing. It's great to hear from him and all of the great work that's happened. All right, moving on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you, President Eilert. First of all, I would like to say this is the state of Ohio's Board Recognition Month. So I want to recognize our board, and I hope the five of you realize just how blessed I feel we are to have the five of you representing our community. It's a diverse group. You have different views. What I do know, the view that you always look at is what Eric just said, which is serving. And then also our kids, and not just one student or two students. It's the whole picture, and you certainly serve with your hearts, and you do a great job with it. I don't know of another community service position where you have to spend money, raise money, run an election, get voted on, and then make no money and serve a lot of time. So I don't know what that says about you, other than I appreciate it more than you know. There are school districts that we've all seen that it hurts kids when school boards are not doing what they need to do in a professional manner to help kids. That doesn't mean you don't get your viewpoint across. It doesn't mean you don't push us. I feel like we have a very good symbiotic relationship where if we're messing something up, you can let us know and we'll try and fix it. I think you heard from two principals this evening, just want to do good work. And if they can do better work, that's what we want to do, is make sure we do better work. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you do for our staff. Our staff works very, very hard, and I think you getting into the buildings is important. And I think you see when Lynn says the magic, when you see the magic, that's our staff. That's our adults. That is the magic. There is no magic potion other than hard work. And I was able to get into a classroom last week with some of our special needs students. I got to bake banana bread, and it took a lot of time, but man, it was worth it. And our adults in that room are extremely patient, and the kids are better for it. And so I hope you know how much what you do matters in the building. So I say thank you. Last year, I think we had cards. This year, Mr. Setters had Mr. Flagg make a video for our board members. So I'll ask Adam to go ahead and roll the tape.
January is Ohio School Board Recognition Month. The students of Loveland Middle School News Network put together this salute for the Loveland City School District Board of Education.
Loveland school board members are part of our Loveland City School District community.
School board members are elected members voted in by the community.
School board members perform an important public service.
School board members listen and respond to the needs of our students and our community.
School board members advocate for public education with state lawmakers.
School board members set school district policy.
School board members hire, evaluate, and collaborate with the superintendent and treasurer.
School board members approve curriculum and courses like the Loveland Middle School News Network.
Thank you.
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 Thank you. Thank you, Loveland City School District Board of Education.
Eileen Washburn, Dr. Eric Swetchenow, Christina Jaranek, Lynn Mangan, Jonathan Eilert. The Loveland City School District Board of Education.
We had
January.
Last month, if you remember, I did ask your sizes, so hopefully you did not lie. We got
Thank
this.
you for the small. I appreciate it.
Mr. Espy, you want to help me pass these out?
And we did get cards from Hope Squad, so each of you has an envelope there.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Very pretty.
Thank you for proceed. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, couple things I was going to review, and then we're going to turn over to Dr. Puerta, which is Dr. Swetchenow kind of touched base on this. We did a little bit of restructuring with our maintenance, brought in a new maintenance person, and thank goodness we did right before everything hit. Over the last couple weeks, our maintenance and our classified staff, our transportation staff, we realize it's a little chilly out there, and our bus drivers, when they open the door, it gets very cold. The right side of their bodies, I think, gets extremely cold. And I hope they know how much we appreciate what they do. The maintenance, Rich, I saw Rich out breaking ice off a gutter, hoping he wasn't going to hurt himself. Everybody pitched in. There were some districts that had to stay closed an additional day because they did not get the parking lots done properly last week. We did, and that's a tribute to Rich, but also everybody that pitched in. There were guys that were plowing the parking lots at midnight till 6 in the morning, just so we could get the kids in. So we're going to have a little breakfast for the maintenance guys and our head custodians and tell them thank you. I think that's on Thursday. We'll bring them in, give them a little Chick-fil-A and say thank you, because it's not easy work. And we'll also say thank you to our bus drivers as we move forward. But I just want to make sure we say thank you, like Dr. Swetchenow said. Next, the High Ames. When you talk about the magic in the classroom, High Ames is an organization that has many districts in the area. You'll have a superintendent's meeting. I've got one this week. It's probably made up of about, 25 or 30 districts. And there's a middle school. There's a symposium coming up pretty soon. There's elementary principals get together and so forth. We hosted at the primary and elementary last week, and the discussion was on special ed and the interventions that we had. I was able to get in there. We had Alyssa King, we had Lauren Short, we had Libby Westerman and Angie Perkins present, Jane Miller, our assistant principal, Jen Foran, our principal. And I got to tell you, I couldn't have been more proud of what we do. And the number of people that had excellent questions, they did so well, they're bringing another group to host because of what we do in our classrooms. And again, that's the magic we talked about. So kudos to all of those teachers. It's not easy taking time out of your day to do that, especially if it's your planning time. Sometimes you need that 30 minutes to regroup a little bit. So I'm just very, very proud and wanted to let the board know how well we did with that. Next. That is it. The next thing that I have is I was informed today that Coach John Waple at our middle school will be presented at the Hall of Fame banquet for the Ohio Association of Track and Cross Country Coaches. He is going to receive the Sportsmanship, Ethics, Integrity Award for boys track and field. That's for the entire state of Ohio. And I would tell you that sportsmanship, ethics, and integrity probably should be called the John Waple Award, because that's what John is. And he is just something special when we say congratulations to John. The couple other things, I would echo what President Eilert said, which is for our legislators, if you have an interest in school finance, which you probably should if you're in the community of Loveland and you are concerned about finances, to make sure you contact your legislators, see what they're doing with public school funding. Right now, I don't feel like it's moving in a very good direction. And I think it's incumbent upon us as a community to let our legislators know that, whether that be vocally or by what we do in the ballot box. But right now, Loveland and the public education, I think we need to be a little bit vocal, which is why we've got the state funding committee, and we're going to continue to take a look at that. Last thing I was going to mention is Reverend Eilert had mentioned the high school schedule. We're extremely excited about it to see what it could accomplish. The questions I did receive is exactly what Jonathan mentioned earlier, which is we realize the LIS LMS schedule is pretty early. We get that, it's at 7:30. Right now, it's tied into our bus schedule. So we have a 3-tiered look at how we do the buses, and the one tier is kind of locked in due to us being required to bus parochial students, and which is fine, but that just means we've got a little less flexibility. And so we had a meeting scheduled last week, and we had a snow day. So we're going to have a meeting here pretty soon. Take a look at it. I can't say I'm extremely optimistic that we can make large changes, but maybe we can look and see how we can tweak it a little bit so our students could get a little bit more rest. So we'll check and see how that works. All right, the last thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Puerte, is Stacy was able to go to a national conference and present, and part of what she presented was the strategic vision dashboard. Last spring, I guess it would have been, we had our administrative retreat. We had Aubrey come in and present to us. And the one thing I had an interest in was our strategic vision. I like being out front. And was there any way that on some of our website or our website, if we could show what our strategic vision is and some of our check boxes? And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Puerta and let her explain what we've got.
Great. So if you remember last year, I presented on our strategic vision and sort of our progress because it's a 5-year plan. It's not static. We're always doing updates and trying to continue to move forward with our progress. So last year, I don't know if you remember like the heat maps that I showed you, whether we were in the planning phase or in the implementation phase, or we just hadn't even gotten quite that far yet because we were focusing on other things. So this is sort of the next step. So what we did was we took each of our 4 goals and we determined 3 criteria that are data-driven criteria that we are able to show visually on the website. So the point of this would be that it's on our website, it's public facing, anybody can go to it, and it is not static. So it is pulling live data. Some of it is pulling nightly, some of it will be pulled monthly, some of it will just be annual, and you'll understand why that is as I get into it. And some of it I'll do December and June. So I'll kind of explain that as we go. But we just made it live. I think Andrew made it live at like 5:58 this evening. So it's been sort of like behind the scenes for a little while. And when I showed it at FETC this past week, I was able to present it and show it twice, and people were very impressed and came up and asked a lot of questions afterwards. And so people were really excited about it, but it was still kind of like behind the scenes showing it. So this is the first time it's being shown on the website itself. So Adam, actually, if you'll just scroll up all the way to the top so I can kind of show where it lives on our website. It is under the About Us and then the Strategic Vision. You can also go to lovelandschools.org/vision. Is that correct, Andrew? And get to it. So Adam, if you'll scroll down, I'll walk through each of these quickly because these will all be familiar to you. For goal 1, the very first thing we looked at was career pathways. So that very first graph is the number of students that we have had in pre-apprenticeships and internships over the past 3 years. So you can see that that number jumped up significantly from 22 to 23 to 23, 24. And then we're sitting at 56 for the last couple years, which is a really pretty good number for internships and pre-apprenticeships. The second one down is looking at our AP scores. So we're looking at the percentage of AP exams that students took that received a 3 or better. This is longitudinal data over the past 5 years. So this is one of those that will get updated annually and we'll be able to continue to show our growth here. But you can see this past year was 83% of the exams taken earned 3 or better, which is pretty incredible. And then the last one for goal 1, we're looking at, these are our OST scores and our EOC scores. And the first graph here is looking at the ones on the left in orange are our students and the ones in green are the state averages. So for example, the very top one is 3rd grade ELA. Our students, 78% of our students were proficient or better, so they could have been accelerated or advanced. And the state average was 61%. So 61% of the students in the state of Ohio were proficient. Loveland, we had 78%. And you'll see that same trend as you go down for the OSTs. And then below OSTs are EOCs. Pulls a lot of data. Sometimes you have to hit the refresh button. And so you'll see our EOCs down below that, which are all of our high school tests that students take. And then the next one down is looking at really the same thing, but what you'll notice over on the right, and Adam, if you'll just click on the down arrow, you don't have to click on anything. This is if you want to go back and look longitudinally. So you're able to toggle back and forth between different years if you want to see how our students performed over the past few years in any particular subject. So that's for goal 1. As we scroll down, go on, that's just the EOC. We're looking at collaborative culture. So the first thing that we took a look at that we decided to put up here is our wellness check-ins because that's something that we talk about a lot. So this data is being pulled live out of Aubrey. So some of this data Aubrey already has access to, so they're able to keep this dashboard live at all times. So the first graph is, if you scroll down just a little bit so we can see the x-axis, this is our average wellness. As you know, our 7th through 12th grade students go in once a week and they give themselves a score, for lack of a better term, of a 1 to a 5, 1 being poor, 5 being excellent, how they're feeling on that scale. And so this is all the way back to when we started this back in 2022 all the way up until now. And this is just each month what the average score is. And then if you scroll down, we are looking at year by year. So the average score for 2022, 23, 24, and 25. The next graph we're looking at is the number of students that we have. This is grades 7 through 12 participating in sports, clubs, or extracurricular activities. And we're looking at the past 4 years longitudinally. We don't have 24, 25 up there yet because it really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because all those numbers are clearly not in yet. So that will get updated this summer and it'll be able to show the past 5 years. And then this one is because safety is such a hot topic and something that we talk about a lot. This is our safety compliance dashboard. So what this basically shows, going down the very far left column, are all of the required drills for the year. And then going across the top is each of the buildings. And then I will update this a couple of times a year to show where the buildings are in their compliance. So they have to have, their 6 fire drills, 3 safety drills, 2 tornado drills. Those don't happen until April and May. So nobody has had any tornado drills yet. Goal 3 is our community engagement. So the first graph here is looking at our 2 different emails that go out. We have our community newsletter and then our district Tiger Talk. And this will get updated monthly. And this is the number of opens that we've had year to date at this point. And these are 2 different newsletters that go out. So you're not really comparing the 2 against one another. It's just you're looking at them separately. The next one is our communication survey. So when Andrew sends something out to our community asking, what do you think of our engagement? What do you think of our newsletters? Are they easy to understand? Are they helpful and informative? These were the answers that we got. So I think it says 87% was easy to understand and helpful. So I think that's pretty good return on investment there. And then you can kind of toggle back and forth between the other ones, but that's pretty good data there. The next one is just our graphic that you've seen before of all the different ways that the district reaches out to students and staff, families, and communities. So that's just a static graphic that will stay there. And then finally, goal 4 is our fiscal responsibility. So the first graph here shows Loveland in comparison to other Ohio school districts in relation to or in regards to how much we spend per pupil in comparison to other districts, what our admin to student ratio is, and our teacher to student ratio in comparison to other districts in Ohio. The next graph is our staff FTEs in relation to student enrollment over time. This is a graph that Mr. Espy has shown several times, and this is something that will get updated annually, and we'll be able to put the updated graph up here. The next one is our district expenditures. I did put a little bit of a explanation up at the top in that blurb just to kind of explain. I think personnel is pretty self-explanatory, but like what are the other expenditures, what are purchase services, things like that. So I took the large buckets and just give a little bit of detail up at the top. But as you can see, 83% of our costs are personnel. And then the last one is our performance index versus operating expenditures. So, yep, you got it. There we are. And actually, if you hover over like Loveland there or Cincinnati Public, it'll kind of light up for you which one it is. But essentially what this is showing here is Loveland does very well performance index wise, and nobody does better with less than Loveland does in Hamilton County. So
Size of the bubble represents expenditure per pupil.
correct.
So the smaller the bubble, the less expenditure.
Yep. Yep.
Also want to point out that this is 2023 data. So in the 2024 data, we actually rise above the purple circle next to us on the index and still spend less. So.
Not that anyone's paying attention.
So anyway, this is live now, so you can go to the website and view it at any time, and then it will be periodically updated, each of the different graphs on a different cadence. Any questions?
Great, thank you.
I think that's spectacular. This kind of goes back to the communications question. How are we advertising that to the community? Just, you know, again, the more that we can repeat over and over again, how fiscally responsible we are, how great the students are, what we're doing that's better than other districts, the better.
Mhm.
What's our communications plan to make sure everybody knows about that?
This specifically,
Well,
or
yeah, that's specific. I mean, I think a new tool like that that's so data rich should be pushed.
right. So we'll put it in. We just got it live today, so we'll put it in our newsletters to make sure they're aware of it, and we can show it at the CAT when we have the CAT team. We'll make sure we do that as well. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that we have it in our newsletters. You can see the newsletters get open. They get pretty good open rates.
The only question I had about that may or may not be of value is what's our open, you know, we have 80,000 community newsletters were opened. How many did we send out? You know, are we getting a 10% open rate or a 90% open rate?
Yeah. We'd have to ask Mr. Setters that. I don't know the answer to that question, but.
And then the only other thing that jumped out to me, it was spectacular, by the way. I'm really impressed with it. The number of children doing extracurriculars and sports from 7th to 12th grade seemed higher than the number of children we have.
So a student could be counted multiple times. Mhm.
Is there, again, I don't care how we do it. Is there value to saying the percentage of kids who are doing that? I'm not asking you to
Maybe.
change something you just made.
No. I don't have an issue with that at all. Maybe. I'd have to look and see how, Tana is the one who pulled that data. I'd have to look and see if there's a way to pull that out of there.
It would be interesting to see
Mhm.
how many students.
Like what percentage?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can
If I can get
disaggregate
it in
it
a
that way.
table, I can do it.
Okay.
So
Say again.
if I can get it into like a data table, I can do it.
Okay. The end of the superintendent update, I will address, it is cold outside. We've had a few people asking. The last week it was snow, which we worry about driving. This week it's cold, which we worry about students being out on the bus stops and so forth. Working with the Hamilton County ESC and some of the other safety offices, police, fire, they've set kind of -20 as a combination temperature, wind chill. If we get to -20, now you're starting to worry about the temperature in terms of frostbite. But -20 is probably what the majority of districts are going to look at. And the other part I would say, and this one's kind of a tough one because you don't really know until you know. And we really try and make these decisions as early as we possibly can. But we also know it can be a hardship, especially on some of our younger families. But what goes in conjunction when it's really, really cold out, we have diesel engines. And if the diesel engines, after about 15 degrees, it'll start to crystallize a little bit and the fuel gets a little like gel. And so we've got our individuals, our mechanics and everybody else coming in around 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, cranking them up. And that would be a problem if they don't start. So I guess I just ask for patience. We know all the pluses and minuses for families, and we really try and make it the decision as early as possible. This one's a little bit tougher. So,
What's the predicted wind chill tomorrow morning?
I believe -14 is where we're at. Yes. I might have to get a jacket
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
public service announcement for hat and gloves for our kids.
Yes,
parents, please.
yes, yes.
On your kids
We
tomorrow.
we had students wearing shorts in today, so thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Broadwater, for all of your appreciation of us. We're grateful for that and the partnership that we have for the gifts. Thank you on behalf of the board for those. And for the wonderful cards, the Hope Squad, appreciation to them as well. And we do feel appreciated, and I think really it was a highlight to be able to get into the buildings, and thanks again to all our administrators for taking the time to show us around and help us to recognize all the great things happening in the buildings. So appreciate that. All right, next on our agenda is our LHS and LMS course proposals. We have any further, I guess we've already looked at these, so unless we have questions, we don't need to, yeah. Anyone have any additional questions on those? Great. Yeah, we did have extensive discussion about that last time. So do we have a motion then to approve these course proposals?
So moved.
Great. Roll call, please.
Dr. Swetchinow?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jaranick?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, Mr. Collier.
Yes. I have been very patient and I promise I am not going to go as long as Mr. Spencer went earlier tonight.
You better not.
So I have just a couple of things that I want to make sure to point out. The first piece on the HR report is that there was something new that was added all the way at the bottom. That is at E2, and that is Karan DeYoung, who is moving from a 10-month secretary to a 12-month secretary at LPS, which is really great. Mr. Fancher is very excited about that. And the posting for the 10-month secretary went out today, and that is the 10-month position is, we get way more applicants for that, especially because if somebody has their kids in school here, of course, working 10 months instead of the 12 months, they still get to be, some off time in the summer with their family. So other than that, I want to make sure to point out section A3, we have a high school teacher who has put in for their retirement. Congratulations to Ken Reed. He has, at the end of this year, he'll have 21 years here at Loveland City Schools. AP Psych teacher, currently he's the Hope Squad teacher as well. So congratulations to him, and we appreciate all of his service and dedication to our students. Moving right along, there is something I want to make sure to point out to you guys, because, and actually the person is here tonight going to be able to talk with you a little bit, and I appreciate his patience with being with us tonight. We are going to be able to have a new intervention specialist at the high school. Our special education teachers in general, especially here in Loveland, they are very valuable to us. Some of the things that Mr. Broadwater was talking about with that High Ames Consortium, and they were coming for looking at some of our services that we provide, that was in the special education area. And not only are we able to bring somebody who has experience in the classroom, but is also, so he's going to be adding to our group every day in that aspect, but also he is also on the agenda as our new football coach as well. So I'm very pleased to be able to have Mr. Mullins or Coach Mullins be up here in a little bit to be able to talk with you guys a little bit about his excitement of being here. So I know procedurally we have a couple of things that we need to do before we do that. So if there's any questions, I would be glad to field those about the HR agenda piece for section 1.
Questions? A motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jaranick?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchinow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and finish up.
Yep.
Then I'm going to have Coach Mullins come up and speak with you guys. 6.2 is talking about some overnight trips. There are 2 of them that are here. Those are both for show choir. One is to Olentangy and the other one is a trip to West Virginia. Those are in the admin section with those agendas for you guys if you wanted to see the details about what are happening on those trips. I'd be glad to field any questions about 6.2.
Questions about those?
Nope.
A motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jaranick?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchinow?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
You. Hopefully there'll be a lot less snow for Olentangy this year than last year.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. The next section in section 3, this would be something that was brought to the board with discussion and then brought as a first read last meeting. And then now I'm looking for an approval. This is our academic calendar for 26-27 school year. If you recall that We did 2 years worth of calendars to try to get ahead of this a little bit. And then now every year we're going to annually be doing one, which is putting us in motion for families to know a year and a half in advance what the calendar is going to look like for planning purposes, vacations and that kind of thing. So since after the feedback that we've gotten from LEA and from OPSI, there's been a lot of work that goes into this. Since the initial piece where I brought this to the board, I haven't received any other feedback or questions, but I'm looking for approval for that piece as well.
Great. Any additional questions about that or anything that anyone else saw on the calendar? We have a motion then to approve the 26-27 academic calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jarnick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eiler.
Yes.
Okay, so I appreciate all of that. And at this time, I am very happy and pleased to be able to introduce to you our new intervention specialist at the high school and our new football coach for next school year, Mr. Bob Mullins. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I got to tell you, I'm super excited to be a part of Loveland and this community and this school district. I think that this community speaks for itself from an outside perspective of how outstanding that you all are. And I'm very happy to be a part of that, specifically on the teaching side of things. Seeing and hearing all the cool stuff that you all are doing here is very impressive. I've been at other districts and it's just super exciting to be jumping into that part and being able to serve the students of Loveland. And I heard a lot of you talk about relationships. And that hit home for me because you have to build those positive relationships with students. And it's definitely key to the motivation piece. Not just like the coaching side of things. I'm talking about the classroom. And that part of it, I'm super excited. Seeing all the stuff, Dave, that you put up there on the board and all the stuff that you're doing. You guys you're definitely doing it the right way. And I'm ready to get involved in that and super excited to be a part of that. I see that we've got some Ohio State stuff on and yeah, OH. And you win with people, right? Woody Hayes. And I was super impressed throughout the entire hiring process with the folks that you have in leadership positions at your school. And I could definitely feel a really strong connection with all of them along each step of the way. From the teachers that were involved, the coaches that were involved, principals, superintendent. Definitely. Assistant superintendent. So each person that I met with was, I felt a very strong connection with, and you definitely have some great people here. So I'm excited for that. I did get to go to the boys basketball game the other night, and I have 3 boys of my own at home, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And we went to watch the basketball team on Tuesday. And I had to explain to my 8-year-old, he's like, "Are you going to Loveland today?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going over there." I had to explain to him like, "Hey, I'm going to a board meeting. You really don't want to go. You really don't want to come to this." Because his first experience with Loveland was the huge win over the powder blue team right up the road. So he was so excited about that, and he wanted to come back over here. So like I said, I'm super excited to be a part of this. And I think that your community speaks for itself, and I can't wait to get started and get involved. So thank you guys, and I appreciate your time. Stay warm tonight, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's say we really appreciate you being here. You clearly made a great impression on a lot of our administrators as well. They were singing your praises to me the other day in a meeting, and I love the fact that it's not just about you as a coach, because they're very excited about you leading our football program, but also about you as an educator and what you're bringing to the school. And so we're grateful that you're so engaged in both of those areas, and clear, it was clear in what you shared tonight as well. And so we're grateful to have you here and excited to see what is to come.
I'll just echo and say, welcome. We talked to Bob quite a bit about Coach Mullins makes sure teaching is what's important. And I don't think you can be a great coach without being a great teacher anyway. And so I really appreciate the words you had, especially the OHIO. But welcome, enjoy it. This is a great place to be.
All right. If you want to go before the treasurer reports, you're welcome to. You don't have to stay.
This is the best part. I just want to say that. I'm going to take note of that. I'm going to take note of that in the budget meetings next year. All right.
YouTube videos just went down.
YouTube videos. All right.
Our esteemed treasurer, would you like to share your report now?
We're here.
Thank you, Reverend Eilert, members of the board. Happy to bring the treasurer's report. You'll notice in the agenda that I'm bringing you November and December. I'm really wanted to outline the December numbers because it's more data for us to take a look at. When we look at December monthly analysis, believe it or not, we're halfway through the fiscal year. And we're looking at expenditures and revenues currently showing a positive cash impact on our cash balance, and the forecast equal to 0.01%. So we're very, very close to what was forecasted. When we look specifically at expenditures, 0.01% variance, which is a positive variance for us. As I told Mrs. Mangan and Dr. Swetchnow in our Finance Committee meeting, even though they're small variances, I wanted to list what they are. So that's salary and benefits and purchase services coming in together below the forecast, but you can see purchase services a little bit higher, salary and benefits a little bit lower, but it's a 0.01% variance. So 99.99% accurate thus far. In revenues, I had to go another decimal out. 0.008% positive variance. Local taxes are higher and state aid's a little bit lower. Interest income, which I'm really excited about, is up from the mid 70s in November to 115,197.59 for a fiscal year to date of just shy of $500,000.
How'd that compare like monthly to the previous year, 23?
It's actually significantly higher. When we look at the investment income, and really what I want to point out is over here on the right side, our investment strategy is really starting to take hold. When we look at STAR 5.58% this time last year, or at the end of December last year, now it's at 4.6. And you'll notice down here in commercial paper, which we are heavily invested in right now, we're at 4.94%. So we're beating what that STAR or federal rate really is. So that's definitely promising for us. Continuing to have ongoing conversations with our investment advisor at Red Tree about what's next. So any questions on that? As we look at ongoing projects, I'm happy to report that we have a finance intern who's going to be joining me at board meetings starting next month. Very happy to have Luis Saucedo coming in. We actually had our first meeting last Friday. We're going to be meeting for about 1 to 2 hours every Friday. I want to thank Mr. Mernan for helping get that set up. He's actually going to be Luis is going to actually be giving the finance updates. So we'll be working on that. He's also planning on majoring in engineering, but he's already setting his sights on an MBA. So I wanted to get his finance and presentation skills honed in. So we're going to continue to work with him on really what he's looking for. So we're really designing the internship around him.
You're going to build up his ambition too, right?
Absolutely. We need more high schoolers wanting to be school district treasurers when they come out. So that's what we're going to do.
You might see less people leave for the treasurer.
Right. He's going to bring all his friends too.
Yeah.
Also working on policy updates. There's a lot of policies within the last two quarterly updates that we have. So we have a policy meeting set for February 3rd tentatively, so I need a few more people to reach out and say that they're available. And then we're also going to be modeling legislative updates. As Reverend Eilert talked about earlier, lots of uncertainty on school funding. And so I'm working with our analytics company to be able to model what those updates could look like for us. I'm going to talk about Finance Fridays in a bit. I anticipate there's going to be a Finance Friday video outlining that. Also working on grant writing. Several applications have gone in. I think we're up to 7 now on multitude of different items. So continuing to write grants. Happy to set up an insurance committee in the district, which is going to meet quarterly. It's going to be represented by both associations as well as admin and exempt. Really just talking about our insurance consortium, things that impact our rates, and also just getting feedback, two-way communication. It's going to be led by Hub, formerly known as Haran, who did our exploratory review. Also going to be working on educating our staff on Medicare options that they have that could potentially be a win-win for both staff members and the district. And finally, having come out of the CAT meeting, the second CAT meeting that we did in October, and also some feedback we received from the Finance Committee meeting, or sorry, the Finance Town Hall meeting. I have rolled out Finance Fridays. These are a video series and also just a short information series. We typically do the videos every 2 weeks. It's allowed me to hone my video editing skills. I bought a ring light to make sure that, you know, I'm putting my best appearance forward. And also invested in a lot of stuff that I'd never thought I would ever invest in terms of producing videos. So, you know, making sure that it's interesting. Let me just say it's interesting, but it's a really awesome thing to be able to do. Learning the software and all that stuff. But more importantly, I'm really happy to be able to have something come out of those meetings and really be able to get information out to the community. I walked into a local establishment the other night and someone said, "I just watched your Finance Friday video." And I was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Don't tell me what you thought about it. I'm just glad you watched it." 2 clicks.
Did they
Click
buy
counts
you a
up to
drink
2.
because they were so impressed with it?
No. No. Anyway, so, and then on the off weeks, we're actually putting out short information pieces. I do want to thank Mr. Broadwater and Mr. Setters for all their work in helping me get these developed. And it's exciting to have this new initiative to roll out. And finally, there's the logo that Andrew came up with. So when you see those on our socials on Fridays, you know, please check those out, watch the videos, try to keep it to 3 to 4 minutes, you know, very palatable amounts of time, but just want to say thank you for all that. Any questions?
Talking about grants, I hear we finally got final confirmation about the one staffing grant that we were seeking. Is that happened?
Somewhat. So there are actually 2 grants. So there's a grant that goes through Claremont County ESC. They're like 99% sure that that's going to go through. That's really the vital grant because it pays for the majority of it. We're also seeking grants to cover the district's 10 to 15,000 that we would be paying. So we're actually doing both.
Great.
But I would say that both of those are promising.
All right. Any other questions?
That would be good to put on the strategic dashboard once this starts.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously we're going to want to, and I'll probably just create like a slide to show all of the alternate funding that we're bringing in.
All right, so we need a couple of different motions here. First, the financial reports for November. Do we have a motion to accept the financial reports of November 2024?
So moved. Second.
Call, please.
Mrs. Mengen?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick?
Yes.
All right, then 7.2, accept and approve the financial reports for December 2024.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Swetchno?
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan?
Yes.
All right, then on to, we touched on briefly before, our tuition rates for this next year for the kindergarten.
Yes, so as we spoke about, as Mr. Patterson spoke about with the additional room for preschool, if you remember back to November, we discussed what that would look financially to increase our tuition, to get it, because it really hasn't been increased in several years when it comes to preschool. So get it a little bit more competitive with some of our neighbors, but also allowing, with that increase would be allowing us to fund that additional classroom at the majority level. And then when we look at full day kindergarten, we're keeping it at the same rate, just bringing it to you so you're aware that rate is not changing.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the, or any other questions about those tuition rates for either preschool or kindergarten? Do we have a motion to approve them for the 25-26 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick?
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan?
Yes.
Dr. Swetchno?
Yes.
Thank you. Then 7.4, first read on a new policy.
Yeah, so this policy was actually discussed by the policy committee when we met before. We kind of intentionally delayed this to just give us more time to be able to evaluate. But the Ohio Department of Education Workforce suggests that we have a sliding scale. So this is taking our current fee policy and then inserting what we're going to consider a sliding scale of if a student qualifies for free lunch, their tuition for full day kindergarten would be waived. If they qualify for reduced lunch, it would be reduced by 50%. So those would be the metrics that we would use for applying tuition reductions.
Any questions about that? I think it's a very clear way to go about that. We have a motion then to approve this, actually, no.
First read.
Just
Yeah,
first read, yep.
And I do want to also let you know that I worked with the legal counsel just to make sure it was
Great.
on the up and up and it was approved.
Right. All right, the 7.5 donations for this month.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all of these individuals. Art Jarvis, $1,000 to LHS Esports, and then the Foy family, Wesner family, Watts family, and River Hills Christian Church for their donations to the Feed the Kids Fund.
Yes, thanks to all of those folks. Do we have a motion to approve or accept these donations?
So moved. Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchno,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
All right, and then establishment of a new fund within our finances, 035 retirement fund. Say a little bit about.
Yeah, so we've discussed this for a couple months in the finance committee. I want to point out that this is just establishing a fund. This is not funding that fund or transferring into that fund. But what this allows us to do is to kind of mirror some of the other initiatives that we have in the district, which the board has charged us with, which is working with Garth to work on figuring out how many staff members we might have retiring in the next 5 years. This fund allows us to create essentially a savings account for the severance that we're required to pay by Ohio Revised Code, and also our negotiated agreements. And so this really allows us to set this fund up, do further work, and then find out how much we might want to look at funding it in the future. It's not uncommon for districts to yearly in June do transfers into these funds to provide, again, a savings fund. If it sits in the general fund, what ends up happening is you have restricted cash in the general fund that doesn't look restricted because it looks like it's just part of the regular cash balance. So the idea is, again, creating a savings fund for retirement.
I think it's a very helpful vehicle for doing what we need to do, especially retirements that we'll have coming up here soon. So, any other questions about that? And do we have a motion to approve the establishment of the 035 retirement fund?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jernick,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert.
Yes. And 7.7, the amended fiscal year 25 permanent appropriations / amended certificate of estimated resources. Put a little more in that title.
Sorry, that's just what they're called.
Yeah.
Permanent appropriations. Permanent appropriations are, again, our budgets at the fund level. And the certificate is our expected revenue plus the cash we have available for the revenues. These are just updates primarily due to our federal funds. There are also some other local grants that we received as well. So just being able to appropriate at the level that we've received to be able to make those expenditures.
Questions about that? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mengan,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchenow.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mrs. Jernick.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Espy, for your report for this month.
You're welcome. I actually left one thing out, if you don't mind if I say this. Right before winter break, found out that I had a proposal accepted for the OASBO conference, so I'll be presenting. The title is very apropos, given our current funding situation. So it's called What to Do When State Funding Is Not Enough. So I'm going to be collaborating with another local treasurer as well as Frontline, who's the analytics firm that we work with. So
Excellent.
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thanks for all your work at that level to continue to get Loveland out there, but also to help a lot of other treasurers around the state. Good thing to be doing. All right. Do we have motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. We adjourn at 8:12 PM.